The Galactic Hegemony had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They controlled 900 star systems and had 47 different alien species living under their laws. When humans finally built ships fast enough to reach other worlds in the year 2247, the aliens were not happy to see them. Ambassador Linda Moore stood in the Great Hall on the Sar Prime. The room was huge, with crystal pillars that reached up into darkness and small flying machines that translated every word into different languages. All around her sat creatures that looked nothing like humans. Some had too many arms. Some had no arms at all. Some were made of light and energy. Some looked like giant insects wrapped in expensive robes. The leader of the assembly was called High Arbiter Vexlorn. He looked like a praying mantis that had grown to 7 feet tall. His mouth parts clicked together when he spoke, and his voice was cold and sharp. "Your species wants to join the hegemony," Vexlorn said. "You must first prove your worth. This is the standard test for all new species." Linda looked at Admiral Gary Webb, the old soldier who commanded Earth's space fleet. He nodded slowly. They had been warned about this test. "You want us to fight," Linda said. "You want to measure our kill ratio." "Correct." "You will send soldiers to fight in the contested zones. They will battle against our enemy, the Vraxian Collective. How well they fight will decide your place in the galaxy. Good results mean full membership. Bad results mean your species becomes our servants." The word hit Linda like a punch. Servants. If humanity failed this test, they would have no rights, no territory, no voice in galactic matters. They would belong to species that have been building empires, while humans were still living in caves. Admiral Webb stepped forward. "How many soldiers do you want?" 500. "Your best warriors. They will serve for 1 year under hegemony command." Linda had studied the Vraxians. They were reptile creatures bred for war over thousands of generations. They stood 8 feet tall and had scales like armor. They could survive wounds that would kill any human many times over. They had been fighting the hegemony for centuries. "What kill ratio do we need for full membership?" Linda asked. Vexlorn made a sound that meant he was amused. "Our best warriors, the Kelthari, kill 3 Vraxians for every one they lose. That is the highest ratio in the hegemony. You would need at least 2 to 1 for any respect. Anything less, and you will be classified as a lesser species." Linda kept her face calm. "We accept your terms." As the human group left the Great Hall, Vexlorn turned to his assistant, a small frog-like creature named Quilks. "Write down today's date," Vexlorn said. "Another young species is about to learn where they belong. Humans are soft. They come from a gentle world. They will break within months." Quilks wrote down the prediction. Neither of them knew how wrong they would be. 3 months later, the Earth Marine transport ship Steadfast arrived at the war zone. Inside the ship, 500 Marines prepared for battle. Sergeant Cole Martinez sat in the crowded transport bay. He checked his rifle again and again. He was 34 years old and had spent half his life as a soldier. He had fought in wars on Earth and on Mars. His face showed the hard lines of a man who had seen too much death. Around him, his squad prepared in their own ways. Corporal Danny Liu cleaned his combat knife over and over. Private Amy Grant whispered prayers with her eyes closed. Lance Corporal Pete Vasquez told jokes that nobody laughed at. Lieutenant Karen Price walked down the line checking everyone's gear. She was young for an officer, only 28, but she had earned her rank through skill. Her dark eyes saw everything. "Listen up," she said. "We are assigned to support the Kelthari 3rd Regiment on the Northern Front. We are here to watch and learn, not to lead. Our hegemony advisors will make all tactical decisions." Martinez raised his hand. "What are our rules for fighting?" Defense only unless told otherwise. The hegemony wants to see what we can do, not lose 500 Marines on day one. She paused. I know this feels wrong. We are Marines, not Watchers. But this is bigger than us. Every kill we make gets recorded. The future of all humanity depends on how we perform here. The ship shook as it entered the atmosphere. Through the small window, Martinez could see the planet below. It was a nightmare of bombed cities and burned ground. Fires blazed on the horizon. This world had been a battlefield for 80 years. Welcome to war, Martinez said quietly. Their hegemony contact was a Kelthari warrior named Thax. He stood 6.5 feet tall with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His people were considered the best soldiers in the hegemony. Thax looked at the human Marines with open doubt as they gathered at the forward base. Smaller than I expected, he said. His voice was deep and rumbling. No natural armor. No extra organs. How does your species survive being born? Lieutenant Price stepped forward. We adapt. Adapting requires living long enough to learn. Against Raxians, you will not have that chance. Thax pointed toward the distant battlefield where explosions lit up the dark sky. Tomorrow you will watch our attack on the enemy position. See how real warriors fight. Maybe you will learn something before you die. Martinez felt anger rise in his chest but stayed quiet. He had faced people who thought they knew his limits before. This was no different. Just bigger. That night, Martinez gathered his squad in a corner of the barracks. Did you see how they looked at us? Danny Liu said. Like we are already dead. Let them think what they want, Martinez replied. We know what we can do. They do not. Amy Grant pulled up information files on her wrist display. I have been studying the Vraxians. 8 feet tall, armored scales, can take many shots before going down. They use overwhelming force and physical power to win. Sounds like every enemy humanity has ever faced, Pete Vasquez said. Just bigger. Martinez nodded slowly. He thought about stories his grandfather had told him. Stories about humans facing enemies with more numbers, better weapons, better everything. And somehow, they always found ways to win. Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow we watch. But I have a feeling we will not be watching for long. He lay down on his bunk and stared at the ceiling. 500 humans against an empire that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. The odds were impossible. But humans had been beating impossible odds since they first picked up stones and sticks. That was something the hegemony did not understand yet. They would learn. Word of the Canyon of Teeth spread through hegemony forces faster than anyone could control. Within days, other human squads reported similar battles. Small team actions, ambush, tricks and traps that turned bad situations into victories. The kill ratios being recorded were unlike anything the hegemony had ever seen. At Sector 9, Corporal Lucy Barnes led 8 humans and 4 Keltari in a night raid on a Vraxian command post. They killed 42 enemies and captured important information about fleet movements. No human died. At the Burning Ridge, Private Diego Reyes held a mountain pass for 6 hours against repeated Vraxian attacks. He used a captured heavy weapon and homemade explosives. His personal kill count reached 31 before help arrived. At 4 Base Echo, Lieutenant Karen Price planned a defense that turned a Vraxian breakthrough into a deadly trap. She drew enemy forces into prepared kill zones and destroyed an entire attack force. The official hegemony records began showing strange numbers. Human kill ratios were not 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. They were climbing past 10 to 1, 20 to 1, numbers that did not fit any pattern from history. 3 months into the war, High Arbiter Vexilon received a message that made him question his own eyes. This must be a mistake, he said. Looking at the glowing display in his private room, his military advisor, a decorated Kelthari general named Kreth, shook his head. I have checked the numbers myself, High Arbiter. The human kill ratio now stands at 37-1. That is not possible. The Vraxians are among the most dangerous ground fighters in all of space. Yes, and yet. Kreth changed the display to show individual battle recordings. Watch this fight from 16 days ago. The recording showed Sergeant Martinez leading a mixed team through a Vraxian industrial area. The humans moved in ways that seemed almost random to Vexlorn's eyes. They appeared in unexpected spots. They worked together without visible signals. They changed their plans from moment to moment. The Vraxians, for all their strength, could not guess where the next attack would come from. They fell back, grouped up, fell back again. When they finally organized a counterattack, the humans were already gone. They left behind nothing but bodies and burning equipment. How are they doing this? Vexlorn demanded. Kreth paused. Our experts have several ideas. Human reflexes are faster than we thought, especially under stress. Their species seems to have evolved an unusual ability to recognize patterns and adapt to situations. But most importantly, yes, they do not fight like any species in the hegemony. They have no standard method because their homeworld produced thousands of different warrior cultures over their history. Every conflict, every generation, every people developed new approaches. What we are seeing is the combined fighting knowledge of an entire species put into their military training. Vexlorn was quiet for a long moment. You are telling me that humans are natural warriors. I am telling you that humans are natural winners of wars they should not win. There's a difference. On the battlefield, the change continued. Martinez had been promoted to Master Sergeant and given command of a special unit that mixed humans and Kelthari. They had created their own combat language, a mix of hand signals, code words, and gut feelings that let them work as one. The Vraxians had started calling them the Ghost Knives. It was not a name of respect. It was a name of fear. Another convoy hit last night, reported Sergeant Amy Grant, now leading her own squad. 12 supply trucks destroyed, 93 enemy killed. We lost 2 wounded, nobody dead. Martinez nodded, looking at the tactical map. 4 months of constant fighting had aged him. It showed more in his eyes than on his face. He had killed more enemy soldiers than he could count anymore. Each one stayed with him, a weight he carried without complaint. The Vraxians are adapting, he said. Convoy spacing is wider now. Escort forces are heavier. They are learning. Good. Lieutenant Price, now Captain Price, entered the command bunker. Enemies that learn are enemies that might learn to talk. You think there is a chance for peace talks? I think the Vraxian High Command is running out of choices. They have thrown 3 full attack divisions at this area, and we have broken everyone. Their kill ratios are worse than any war in their recorded history. At some point, even warriors start counting the cost. Martinez hoped she was right. He had seen enough death for many lifetimes. But he also knew that the Vraxians were proud. Proud warriors rarely gave up until they had nothing left. The change came not from the Vraxians, but from the hegemony. Ambassador Moore contacted Captain Price directly, skipping normal military channels. Her face on the display was carefully controlled, but Martinez could see excitement hiding beneath the calm surface. The Galactic Council has called an emergency meeting, Moore said. Topic: the human question. I thought our test was not supposed to end for another 8 months, Price replied. It was not. But the information coming from the war zone has forced their hand. The other member species are demanding answers. Some are scared. Others are angry. A few are very interested in hiring human soldiers. What is Earth's position? We do not have an official one yet. That is why I am calling. The council wants a human military representative to speak to the assembly. They want to understand how you are getting these numbers. Martinez felt the weight of that request settle on his shoulders even before Price turned to look at him. "Send Sergeant Martinez," Price said. "Me?" Martinez shook his head. "I am not a diplomat. I am not even an officer. You are the face of human military power right now. The recordings of your battles have spread throughout hegemony space. If we want them to understand us, we need someone who can show them who we really are." Martinez thought about the soldiers under his command. The Kelthari who had fought beside him and learned from him and taught him in return. He thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who had no idea that their future was being decided on a distant battlefield. "When do I leave?" He asked. The trip to the SAR Prime took 3 days. Martinez spent most of it preparing what he would say. Ambassador Moore had helped him write careful words designed to calm fears without sounding weak. He memorized every word. Then he set them aside. When he arrived at the circular assembly, the Great Hall was more crowded than it had been when humanity first asked for membership. Representatives from all 47 species had sent delegates. Many were senior military officers who rarely left their home worlds. The watching areas were packed with reporters and analysts from 100 planets. Master Sergeant Cole Martinez stood at the central speaking platform, a single human among thousands of alien watchers. He felt very small. High Arbiter Vexler opened the session. "We gathered to address something unexpected in our testing process. The human military group on the battlefield has achieved combat results that go beyond all predictions. The council requires explanation." He turned to Martinez. "Sergeant, you have been identified as the one most responsible for developing the tactics that have proven so effective. You will explain how humans achieve these results." Martinez looked out at the assembled beings. Some looked back with hostility, others with fear, a few with what might have been hope. He had his prepared speech ready, careful words designed to reassure without threatening. He set them aside. "I am not going to explain human tactics," he said, "because tactics are not what makes humans effective. Any species can learn tactics." A murmur spread through the assembly. This was not what they expected. What makes humans effective is that we have never had a choice. The attack on the enemy position was a disaster. Martinez watched through his scope as 3,000 Kelthari warriors charged across open ground toward the Vraxian defenses. The hegemony's finest soldiers moved in perfect lines, their weapons blazing with plasma fire. The Vraxians let them come. When the Kelthari reached 200 meters from the enemy, the ground exploded. Hidden bunkers opened up with heavy cannons. Automatic gun towers rose from camouflaged holes. Vraxian counterattack teams swept in from the sides. In 20 minutes, it was over. 1,800 Kelthari lay dead or dying on the battlefield. The survivors ran back through a killing field that never stopped taking lives. "Commander," Thax watched from the command post beside the humans. His face showed no emotion, but Martinez noticed a small shake in one of his hands. "The ratio was bad," Thax said flatly. "We will change our approach and attack again tomorrow." Lieutenant Price stared at him. "You are going to do the same thing again?" "The Vraxians will have used up ammunition. Their positions are now mapped. We repeat with small changes. This is standard method. That is not changing approach. That is just dying slower." Thax turned to look at her. Something flickered in his yellow eyes. Not anger, tiredness. This is how war has been fought for 3,000 years. This is the hegemony way. That night, Martinez could not sleep. He kept seeing the Kelthari charge. He kept counting bodies. 1,800 dead to gain nothing. And tomorrow, they would do it again. He found himself walking around the base, past guard posts manned by alien soldiers who looked at him with curiosity or dislike. He ended up at a watchtower overlooking the battlefield. Someone was already there. Lieutenant Price staring out at distant fires. "Cannot sleep either?" he asked. She shook her head. "I keep thinking about the numbers. At this speed, the Kelthari will lose their whole regiment in a month. And for what? Ground that means nothing. Permission to speak freely, Lieutenant." "Always, Sergeant." Martinez chose his words carefully. "I have been studying their tactics. The hegemony's tactics. They are not bad soldiers, but they fight like they are following instructions from a machine. No creativity. No surprise. No willingness to try something new. Because that is how they have always done it. Every species in the hegemony fights the same way. Standard rules, standard formations, standard everything. It also makes them easy to predict." Martinez pulled up a map on his wrist unit. "Look at the Vraxian positions. They are dug in but spread thin. Heavy weapons here, here, and here. If we hit them from many angles at once, with small teams using cover, you are describing guerrilla tactics. I am describing how humans fight when we are outgunned and outnumbered, which we always are." Price studied the map for a long moment. "Even if we could do it, we do not have permission. We are just watchers. Tomorrow, after the next attack fails, there will not be enough Kelthari left to hold this area. The Vraxians will counterattack. This base will be in their path. You think they will come here? They would be stupid not to. And the Vraxians are not stupid." Martinez was right. The second attack cost another 1,600 Kelthari lives. By noon, the regiment was broken. By sunset, Vraxian scouts were testing the base defenses. Commander Thax called an emergency meeting with all officers. Lieutenant Price attended with Martinez as her senior soldier. "We will hold position until help arrives," Thax announced. "Standard defensive methods. Everyone to prepare positions. When does help arrive?" Price asked. 14 days. The room went quiet. Everyone knew the math. The remaining Kelthari numbered less than 400 who could fight. The Vraxian force coming toward them was over 3,000. Standard defense needed 3 defenders for every attacker. They had closer to 1 for every 7. "With respect, Commander," Price said, "standard defense will get us all killed. Then we will die with honor. This is the way." Martinez stepped forward. The Kelthari officers looked shocked. A low-ranked human speaking in a command meeting was apparently not done. "There is another way," he said. Dax's mouth clicked in what might have been annoyance. "Speak human. We do not try to hold the base. We leave it. Let the Vraxians take it. Then we make them bleed for every inch they try to keep. Retreat is not. It is not retreat. It is moving to fight better. We break into small groups, spread out into the land around us, and hit them fast, then disappear. The Vraxians expect you to stand and fight. Do something they do not expect." Thax stared at him for a long time. "This is not standard method. No, it is human method. And it has kept our species alive through every war we have ever fought." The Kelthari commander turned to Lieutenant Price. "You support this idea?" Price met his eyes. "I do." Another long pause. Then, slowly, Thax nodded. "We will try your way, human. If we are going to die anyway, we might as well die trying something new." Over the next 3 days, Sergeant Cole Martinez became the most important human on the planet, working with Lieutenant Price and the surviving Kelthari officers. He divided their combined force into 23 strike teams. Each team had both humans and Kelthari, forcing the two species to work together and learn from each other. The Vraxians swept into the empty base, expecting a siege. Instead, they found abandoned buildings and hidden explosives. The first blast killed 80. Vraxians and destroyed their main command vehicle. Over the next week, Martinez's strike teams hit supply trucks, ambushed patrols, and killed officers. They used terrain that the hegemony had called worthless. Caves, valleys, and ruins where heavy Vraxian troops could not follow. The Vraxians, used to enemies who stood and fought in neat lines, had no idea how to respond to enemies who struck from shadows and vanished before anyone could fight back. On the 8th day, Martinez's own team got cornered. They had blown up a Vraxian ammunition storage and were moving to escape when a patrol found their trail. 3 Vraxians quickly became 30 as the enemy called for help. Multiple enemies north and east, Danny Liu reported. His voice was tight. We are boxed in. Martinez looked at their position. A narrow canyon with high walls on both sides. One way out to the north, blocked by enemies. The other to the south being cut off fast. How many bullets do we have? He asked. 37 total. 37 bullets between 5 humans and 2 Kelthari against 30 Vraxians. The math was brutal. Sergeant, said Kethax, one of the Kelthari warriors on his team. If we give up, they will. We are not giving up. Martinez's mind was racing. Liu, those explosives you took from the storage. How much power? Enough to bring down half this canyon. Set them at the south entrance. Vasquez, Grant, get on that ridge and make every shot count. Kethax, Stalin, you are with me. What are you doing? Kethax asked. Martinez checked his rifle. 22 bullets in the magazine. Being the distraction. What happened next would later be called the Canyon of Teeth Battle. Vraxian reports captured months later described it as impossible. Sergeant Cole Martinez, with only 2 Kelthari warriors, charged directly at the northern enemy position. Not a suicide run, but a controlled advance. Moving from cover to cover. Shooting with perfect aim. The Vraxians, expecting prey to run or hide, froze for a moment at the boldness of it. Martinez killed 4 in the first 10 seconds. Kethax and Thawne, following his lead, killed 3 more. The Vraxians recovered and opened fire. Plasma bolts burned the rock around them. Martinez took a hit to his left arm. The armor took most of it, but his flesh burned beneath. He kept moving, kept shooting, kept drawing enemy attention away from the canyon mouth, where his team was setting explosives, 1 minute, 2, 3, forever measured in heartbeats and trigger pulse. Vraxian officer finally organized a flanking attack. Martinez saw it coming. He had 4 bullets left. Now, Liu. He screamed into his radio. The South Canyon entrance exploded. Thousands of tons of rock crashed down. The Vraxians stumbled. The flanking team hesitated. Martinez made them pay for that hesitation. He came out of cover firing. Dropped 2 more Vraxians. Then close to hand-to-hand range when his rifle clicked empty. His combat knife found the throat of a 3rd. When the dust settled, 18 Vraxians lay dead. The rest had run away. Martinez stood in the center of the carnage. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds. His armor was cracked. His knife was broken. He had never felt more alive. Sergeant, Kethax said, staring at him with something like wonder. How did you know that would work? I did not. Martinez sat down heavily on a rock. But it was better than waiting to die. Martinez stood at the center of the great assembly hall. Thousands of alien eyes watched him. Some with anger. Some with fear. Some with curiosity. He took a deep breath and continued. Our home world had no galactic community to protect us. No advanced technology to save us. Every war in human history was fought by people who had to figure things out themselves or die. He pulled up a display showing images from Earth's past. Ancient battles with swords and shields. Castle sieges. Trench warfare. Modern combat. We fought with sticks and stones before we knew about metal. We fought with swords before we knew about guns. We fought with rifles before we learned to split atoms. And at every stage, we faced enemies who should have beaten us. Enemies with more soldiers, better positions, better weapons. And we kept finding ways to win. The display changed to show the Canyon of Teeth battle. When I faced 30 Vraxians with almost no ammunition and no hope of rescue, I did not feel fear. I felt focus, because my species has been in situations like that for 100,000 years. It is in our blood. When the world tells us we cannot win, something inside us refuses to accept it. High Arbiter Vexlorn leaned forward. You are describing behavior that makes no sense. No logical thinking would suggest fighting under those conditions. Exactly. Martinez met his gaze directly. And that is why you keep losing. Because you fight wars with logic. You calculate acceptable losses and best ratios and smart retreats. You make war into math. And humans do not? Humans cannot. We are not logical enough. When our friends are dying and our homes are burning, we do not calculate. We fight. We rage. We do whatever it takes, no matter how impossible. He let those words hang in the air. You wanted to know why our kill ratios are what they are. The answer is simple. The galaxy has been fighting wars the same way for 3,000 years. Standard tactics, predictable behavior, acceptable losses. You have gotten good at surviving, not winning. And when a species comes along that refuses to play by those rules, you do not know how to respond. A Kelthari general stood up. You speak as if human military power is better than everyone else. This is pride talking. No, it is not. Kelthari soldiers are stronger than humans. Vraxians are tougher. Half a dozen species in this room can outthink us in pure calculation. But when it comes to war, when it comes to the dirty, desperate, unfair reality of killing your enemies before they kill you, humans have one advantage none of you can match. Which is, we are used to being the underdog. We have been preparing for fights like this for our entire existence. And we are very good at winning them. The assembly fell into chaos. Delegates argued, shouted, demanded explanations, or made complaints. High Arbiter Vexlorn called for order many times before finally ending the session, but one figure approached Martinez before he could leave the hall. Commander, Thax of the Kelthari 3rd Regiment. He was no longer assigned to the war zone, but was here as a watcher. You spoke well, Thax said. I spoke truthfully. Sometimes those are the same thing. Thax's mouth clicked thoughtfully. The warriors who served with you speak of you with great respect. They say you taught them to fight again after 3,000 years of following instructions. I just showed them another way. They chose to learn. Yes, that is what worries the Council, I think. Not that humans can fight, but that you can teach. If other species begin using your methods. He did not finish. Martinez understood. The hegemony's power rested on everyone fighting the same way. That gave the founding species a permanent advantage. If humans started spreading their wild, flexible approach to warfare, that advantage would disappear. What happens now? Martinez asked. That will be decided by those above us. But I wanted you to know something. Thax stood to his full height. On the battlefield, before you changed things, I had accepted death. My regiment was being ground to nothing, and I saw no other outcome. You gave us another choice. Whatever the Council decides, the Kelthari will not forget. The Council's decision came 3 days later. Ambassador Moore delivered the news to Martinez in person. Her face showed both victory and worry at the same time. They have given Earth full membership in the hegemony, she said. Not temporary status. Full membership with complete voting rights and territory claims. Martinez had expected to feel relief or happiness. Instead, he felt only caution. What is the price? Smart question. Moore's smile was thin. The hegemony wants exclusive military deals. Human units assigned to Hegemony Command for joint operations throughout space. They want us to help them win wars they have been losing for centuries, so we go from being tested to being used. At much better pay and with much more authority. But yes, the galaxy has discovered what humans can do, and now they want to use it. Martinez thought about the soldiers back on the battlefield. About the Kelthari warriors who had learned to fight alongside humans and found something that had been missing from their methods for thousands of years. He thought about what it meant to be the galaxy's new weapon. And if we say no, then the 47 other species of the hegemony will spend the next century figuring out how to stop us before we become a threat. We've shown them what we can do. We cannot unshow them. She was right, of course. The galaxy demanded numbers, and humans had given numbers that changed everything. There was no going back, only forward into whatever future those numbers had created. I need to return to the war zone, Martinez said. The fighting there is not over. No, but it will be soon. The Vraxians have asked for ceasefire talks. For the first time in 300 years, they are willing to negotiate. Because of us? Because of what you showed them. That there is a species in the galaxy that will not fight by their rules. That some wars cannot be won by being bigger or stronger or tougher. Moore paused. Cole, what you did out there matters. Not just for Earth, but for every species that has been ground down by how the hegemony fights its wars. You showed them there is another way. Martinez was not sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but he supposed he would find out. He returned to the war zone 2 days later. The fighting had slowed but not stopped. Both sides were waiting to see what the peace talks would bring. Captain Price met him at the landing pad. She looked tired but relieved to see him. How did it go? She asked. We got full membership. The galaxy is scared of us now. Good. Fear keeps people honest. She walked beside him toward the command bunker. While you were gone, we had 3 more major engagements. All victories. The kill ratio is now past 40-1. How many did we lose? 4 dead. 22 wounded. Her voice was quiet. I knew all their names. So did I. They walked in silence for a while. Around them, human and Keltari soldiers moved about their duties. The 2 species had learned to work together, had learned to trust each other. That was worth something, maybe more than any kill ratio. What happens next? Price asked. The hegemony wants to use us. Deploy human units across their space to fight their wars. And you agreed? I did not have a choice. Neither did Earth. Martinez stopped and looked out at the scarred battlefield. But maybe that is not a bad thing. Maybe other species need to see what we can do. Need to learn that there are other ways to fight. You want to change how the galaxy wages war. I want to stop seeing 1,800 soldiers die for nothing. If that means changing things, then yes. Price nodded slowly. It will not be easy. The hegemony has been doing things the same way for 12,000 years. Humans have been changing things for a lot longer than that. It is what we do. A message came through on his wrist unit. The ceasefire was official. The Vraxian collective had agreed to end hostilities pending formal peace negotiations. For the first time in centuries, this sector of space was at peace. Martinez looked up at the sky, at the stars that humans had only recently learned to reach. Out there were hundreds of worlds, thousands of species, millions of years of history. And now humanity was part of it, not as servants, not as lesser beings, as equals who had earned their place through blood and courage and the simple refusal to accept defeat. The galaxy had demanded. Numbers. 1 Earth Marines. Kill ratio had silenced them. but the real work was just beginning. The peace agreement with the Vragian Collective was signed 8 months later. Master Sergeant Cole Martinez was not at the formal ceremony. He had turned down the invitation. Instead, he spent the day with the soldiers he had fought beside for nearly a year. They gathered at Fort Base Echo, humans and Kelthari together, and remembered those who did not make it. The final death counts were hard to look at. 47 human Marines killed in action, 163 wounded. Out of 500 sent to fight, more than 40% had been touched by death or injury. But the kill ratios spoke louder than any memorial could. Over 12 months, 500 human Marines had killed more than 18,000 enemy soldiers, a ratio of 36-1, the highest in hegemony history. Some called it a miracle. Others called it a warning. "You have received another promotion offer," Captain Price told Martinez as they watched the sunset over the scarred land. "Lieutenant Colonel, command of the new Human Hegemony Combined Operations Division." I saw. Martinez did not look away from the horizon. I turned it down. Why? Because I am a sergeant. I fight wars. I do not plan them from offices. Price was quiet for a moment. "The galaxy is changing, Cole, because of what we did here. Someone needs to help guide that change. Someone does. Just not me." She did not push further. She understood, probably better than anyone, the weight that Martinez carried. He had become a symbol, a legend, the human who had looked at impossible odds and smiled. But symbols were not people. And Martinez needed to stay a person with all the limits and problems that came with it. "What will you do instead?" she asked. "Train others. There are thousands of species in the galaxy who have been fighting the same way for ages. I want to help them find their own strengths. Not human tactics, but whatever makes them special. You want to be a teacher. I want to be useful, in the way that matters most." In the years that followed, human military thinking spread throughout hegemony space, not to replace old ways, but as another choice. Adaptive warfare, they called it. The Martinez method. Small team tactics. Made-up solutions. The willingness to do whatever it took to win, no matter what the rules said. Some species accepted it quickly. The Kelthari built new training programs that created warriors who could think and adapt instead of just follow orders. The crystal beings called Vexari, known for their rigid logic, made hybrid combat styles that combined calculation with human instinct. Others pushed back. The hegemony's leaders tried to turn the human approach into a new set of rules, to make it something that could be taught and controlled. They missed the point entirely. But that was to be expected. Cole Martinez spent the rest of his military career training warriors from dozens of species. He helped them find the fighter inside themselves that their cultures had buried under centuries of standard methods. He never took the promotions that were offered, never accepted the political positions that would have made him powerful. He stayed until the end, a sergeant who taught soldiers how to survive. The memorial on the battlefield. World was finished 5 years after the war. Ended. It stood at the site of the Canyon of Teeth, a simple stone marker engraved with the names of every human who died in the campaign. 47 names. 47 people who gave everything so that humanity could prove its worth to a galaxy that expected them to fail. Martinez visited once a year, on the anniversary of the first battle. He would stand before the stone and remember each name, each face, each moment of sacrifice that had brought them to this point. 1 year, Vexlorn came to find him there. The High Arbiter had grown old in the way insect species did. His shell showed cracks and he moved slower than before, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "I was wrong about your species," Vexlorn said, standing beside Martinez at the memorial. "When you first came before the council, I expected you to fail. I expected to mark humanity as a servant species and move on to more important things. A lot of people expected that. Yes, and we were all wrong. Vexlon made a sound that meant something like a sigh. Do you know what other species call humans now? I've heard a few names. The most common is the adaptive ones, but there is another term, used mostly by warriors who have fought beside you or against you. They call you the galaxy's edge, the sharpest point, the place where everything changes. Martinez looked at the names on the memorial. I am not sure we deserve that. Perhaps not, but you have earned it. Vexlon paused. I came to thank you, Master Sergeant. Not for winning wars, but for showing us that wars can be won differently. The hegemony has been stuck in old ways for too long. Humans have reminded us what change looks like. Change is painful, Martinez said. People die during change. Yes, but they also die when nothing changes. At least with change, there is hope. Cole Martinez retired from military service at age 58. He had served for 24 years without stopping. He settled on a quiet world near Earth's colonial territories, far from the battlefields and politics that had filled his adult life. He grew vegetables, read books, sometimes welcomed visitors who wanted to hear stories about the old days. The galaxy had changed in ways both big and small. Human military advisors served in every major fleet. Human tactical ideas were studied at war schools across the hegemony, and everywhere in large ways and small ones. Species that had fought the same way for ages were starting to ask if there might be better approaches. The Vraxian Collective, once humanity's most feared enemy, had become one of its closest friends. Their warriors spoke of humans with respect that bordered on worship. They had learned firsthand what the adaptive ones could do. The hegemony itself had begun to change, slowly letting go of the rigid structures and standard thinking that had defined it for 12,000 years. It would take generations to finish the change, but the first steps had been taken, all because a small group of human soldiers had refused to accept that they could not win. On the last day of his life, Cole Martinez sat on his porch and watched the sun set over his fields. He was 93 years old. His body was failing in the ways that bodies do, but his mind stayed clear and his memories stayed sharp. He could still see the canyon of teeth, still feel the weight of his rifle, still hear the voices of the soldiers who had fought beside him. Amy Grant had become a general before retiring to write her life story. Danny Liu had died a hero, leading a desperate defense that saved an entire colony. Pete Vasquez had found faith somewhere along the way and spent his final years as a military chaplain. Karen Price had risen to command Earth's unified armed forces, the first Marine to hold that position. Kethax had passed away 3 years ago, surrounded by students who called him the father of Kelthari adaptive warfare. Thax had lived long enough to see his species transformed, to watch the rigid warriors of his youth become something more flexible and dangerous. They had all made their marks on history in their own ways. Martinez was proud of every one of them. "Hey, old man," said a voice from the doorway. His granddaughter, Sophia, stepped onto the porch with a tray of tea. She was 18 years old, about to begin her own military service, carrying the family tradition forward into a galaxy that her grandfather had helped reshape. "Thinking about the old days?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Always." "Tell me about the Canyon of Teeth again." He smiled. It was her favorite story, the one she had asked for since she was old enough to understand words. He had told it 100 times, maybe more. Always the same, but always a little different as memory and meaning grew together. "Well," he said, "it started when we got cornered by 30 Vraxians with barely any ammunition left." As he spoke, the sun sank below the horizon. His voice carried into the gathering darkness, passing on lessons that had been written in blood and fire. wisdom that humanity had earned through 10,000 years of impossible victories. The galaxy had demanded numbers. One Earth Marine's kill ratio had silenced them, but the real legacy was not the numbers at all. It was the lesson behind them. The truth that Cole Martinez had carried with him from his first battle to his final sunset. When the universe tells you that you cannot win, you have two choices. You can accept it and die quietly, or you can refuse and fight and rage against the impossible until the impossible gives way. Humans had always chosen the second option. They always would.